And it is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Jalonne White-Newsome. It has been a pleasure to get to know Dr. J this past year as we have prepared for this conference. She is a force for good. We are lucky to have her as part of the movement as we fight for environmental health and justice. Dr. White-Newsome just joined the University of Michigan SEAS as an associate professor in the Environmental Justice Specialization. But she has an incredible resume that had her working in the environmental movement across sectors, the private sector, foundations, the public sector. Her research areas include environmental and climate justice policy and practice. So she's finding solutions to address the social, economic, and public health impacts of climate change. Dr. White-Newsome started her career in chemical engineering, tackling environmental challenges across sectors. Most notably, from 2022 to 2025, she was appointed to serve as the first federal Chief Environmental Justice Officer, leading the White House's Office of Environmental Justice that was charged with advancing the Biden-Harris administration's environmental justice initiatives. We are excited to have her back home in Michigan, and that she is now professionally based right here in our watershed. Jalonne, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Okay, I need some more energy. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are blessed with a heat wave this morning. 44. I got out of my car and I did not need my jacket, so I am very excited. The little things. Dr. Blanco, I don't know if you're still here, but congratulations on your 60th anniversary as well. Again, it's important that we acknowledge the folks that took care of this land before us, and that's already been done. And I think even more than the words of acknowledgement, what's important is that the work of this council really speaks to what that acknowledgement means. It means stewarding the lands and the water and the things sometimes that we take for granted. And so thank you to each of you in this room that has played a role in that stewardship and really living out what that acknowledgement of the original peoples that took care of this land before us means. So I am so honored to be here and to even be asked to be here. And you know, when I think about, I gotta get myself, let me make sure I don't mess up anything. Okay, awesome. When I think about everything that we have been going through over these past several months, a little bit shy of 1,100 days, I imagine life has not been boring for any of us. I imagine the things that have been occurring probably hits each of us in a different way. And when I think about, again, this moment that we're in, I get excited. I get excited about the potential. I get excited about the things that we are even going to accomplish in a space where it seems like it is just crisis and crisis, one after the other. And so when I think about the conversations that I have across this country with community organizations, with organizations that are working in spaces much like each of you, and I don't know any of you in this room, but I don't know all of you in this room, but the work of environmental protection, advocacy, policymaking, you know, I get calls from folks since earlier this year that were just nervous about how they were going to survive and literally keep the doors open. The fact that the resources that were promised to many organizations have been taken away, stolen and frozen. And this tool developed by the Natural Resources Defense Council quantifies the billions of dollars that a lot of organizations, and maybe some of you in this room, have not received when the tide shifted in Washington. And that is a reason to be concerned. When I think about the fact that some of the things that many of you have fought hard for, particularly PFAS and protecting our public health and our waterways from contaminants that harm, again, our children and some of our most communities that are made vulnerable due to infrastructure. that is annoying, and it makes you mad. I know I've been traveling the past couple months, and I have made it a point to thank the TSA agents that I come across, because there have been so many people that have been furloughed or working for no pay, in addition to the delayed flights and the challenge that causes for folks that have to travel. Again, we are facing a lot in addition to trying to keep food on the table. So even in the midst of all of this, again, I think about the importance of resilience. And you have to forgive me, we are deep in women's volleyball season. And my daughter in upstate New York plays college volleyball. They just knocked out and swept the team for the first round of the league champions, and we're headed to New York on Friday and Saturday. So I am deep in the volleyball season, and when I think about all the things that have been happening, one of the sparks for me is my daughter, because I have seen her resilience in times of crisis. In fact, this was the game a couple days after she dislocated her shoulder. And we thought she was going to be out for the season. But I will say to you, she has not missed a game, and she had her career high a couple of weeks ago. And if anybody can talk about resilience, or if anything can give me that spark to keep going, it's the fact that I watched her work through the pain, play through the pain, support her team, stay focused on the mission, and not give up. And so I think in this time, resilience is important. And so what I want you to do first, because I don't want you to fall asleep on me yet, is to take a couple moments, stand up, because we have a nice intimate crowd here, and think about what is that thing that is your reminder of resilience. What is that thing that got you out of bed to come here today, that continues to encourage you to do this work that is so important for this watershed, this community, and this state? And so I'm going to ask you to be a little bit brave and stand up and go talk to at least 2 people you do not know. You don't know. Introduce yourself. Most importantly, smile. Act like you want to be here. And then tell them, what is that thing that reminds you of resilience? So you have 5 minutes. So please get up and do your thing. And I want to hear some murmurings. All right, 2 more minutes. So either switch or start to close your conversations. All righty. We'll take the last 20 seconds. All right. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. This is a beautiful sound. Thank you all for going on this adventure and journey. How many of y'all had a good conversation with somebody you just met? And if you can yell out 2 or 3 people, what did folks say reminded them of resilience? Just raise your hand and call out. This is informal. Yes. Their kids. Awesome, thank you. I saw a hand up there. Yes. Being able to see change. Thank you. Yes.
Like it or not, there's issues that you have to be in.
Yes.
So you got to stay in the game.
Yes, we got to stay in the game. All right, one more. I thought I saw another hand today. Yes. Yes, younger people getting out and doing the work. So again, thank you all for that, because again, I think it's important that we recognize we are all human. And sometimes we need to be reminded and refreshed and reinvigorated of why we do this work and why it's so important. And I would imagine most of you are from somewhere around Michigan, and particularly with southeastern Michigan, are aware of the floods that we have experienced over the last several years. And I want to start out with this as we talk about, again, resilience, that, you know, I didn't pull these photos off of AI or just Google. These were photos from my family, their home on the east side of Detroit that unfortunately flooded 5 times in 2 years. And so when I think about resilience, I think about the fact that oftentimes when people talk about resilience, it's the fact that you as a person have to withstand all this stuff, and that makes you extra strong because you're resilient. When in fact, we should be thinking about the systems that need to be made more resilient so people don't have to be so strong and so unnecessarily resilient. So this reality that my parents experienced is a reality that many of us have experienced, many Michiganders, in terms of our environment and the structures, both the physical and the social and the political sometimes, that make us more vulnerable than we need to be. And so part of my work at the Kresge Foundation some years ago was to try and build that systemic resilience. The fact that we were able to bring together water leaders from across the country, small NGOs, academics, researchers, water utility professionals that had this common vision of saying, hey, there are things that we can do together that will strengthen the systems to make sure that the public health is protected, that our communities are protected, that our watersheds are safe. I saw and witnessed the power of community, the power of collaboration, and the power that it takes to build resilient systems that can change lives and face the threats that we know that we're going to continue to face. And so when I think about the wonderful folks that came together over the years that I was at the foundation that worked in the water space to enhance water quality and water protection, I was always amazed that when we got together in this community of practice, we developed a common language. Even though we came from different spaces, we developed a common vision. And everything we did in our little silos sought after achieving that shared vision. And so when I think about the work at Kresge, that was a watershed moment for me, because it was my goal to shift the way we thought about climate resilience and water equity and practice and policy. It was a way for us to really shift the way people thought about equity and operationalized it. And there's been many a watershed moment in the water sphere. When we look over time, and this is not comprehensive, we think about the Public Act 200 that again created an opportunity for governmental units to address these water quality issues. We think about the creation of this great organization and also the creation of this college. We think about the fire on the river in the great state of Ohio where I was born that really set off this notion that water burning is not something that should be normalized, even though that wasn't the first time that it had happened, but it was the impetus for the creation of the Clean Water Act and the Environmental Protection Agency that would soon, again, seek regulations to protect our water quality. And then we think about the watershed moment of the farm bills, and again, the protection from the nutrient loading of our water bodies. And then, of course, the administration, the Biden-Harris administration, which I think brought on many a watershed moment. The fact that we had leadership in place that I think prioritize people and prioritize environmental protection and put money where their mouth was. The fact that my colleagues in the Council on Environmental Quality that worked on water and conservation set forth working with our federal agency partners that created protections against PFAS, that invested billions of dollars in water infrastructure across this country and in the state of Michigan, and worked to really conserve and preserve our water and land across this country through the America the Beautiful initiative. So again, we have had some watershed moments. But even with those watershed moments and with the change in the regime in DC, the threats still exist. They have not gone anywhere. The threats of PFAS in our waters and all the things that we use on a daily basis. The fact that these still have sources of pollution from landfills and other waste sites that, again, contaminate the upstream. We have flooding. We have microplastics in our water, phosphorus loading, environmental injustice. The threats have not gone away. And as we think about these threats and the reality that there is still the change that we're fighting for, but there are barriers to that change. And I liken it to water flowing from upstream to downstream through a watershed. The fact that there's different topography, sometimes rough, and barriers that we face as that water travels. And as we think about policy and real changes that we want to see, there are barriers, there are different challenges. Sometimes we're taking on the good and the bad just because water, again, takes on good stuff as well as it carries pollution. And all of these things, again, lead to that vision of safety and healthy and quality watersheds that we seek. But again, I think about the importance of our foundation, the foundation of the Huron River Watershed Council, the foundation of many of the laws and the protections that were set forth to make our water quality the best. And I think about some of the work that I did in Hawaii and working with their, what they call the blueprint for action, but really the support of conserving fresh water. And how, despite the challenges historically that, again, if you ever have time to dig into the history of Hawaii and its water challenges, but the fact that they revered water as a relative, and how the shift in their society caused these inequities to raise up. But realizing that there is a way to address that shift, that again, change that sometimes happens in a crisis in Hawaii and other places, and particularly here in southeastern Michigan. So going back to the beginning, remembering that water is life is critical. And the fact that our watershed moment is now. And what we do with it or what we decide to not do with it is super important. So there's a couple ways that I've been reflecting on how we maximize this moment. How do we maximize our watershed moment? And I just want to speak briefly to each. The first is clarifying your role. Yeah, these are rolls of toilet tissue, so don't get it twisted. But I think in a time where we have dwindling resources, where organizations are maybe going after monies from the same pot, where we have been forced to reprioritize and shift the way we operate, understanding each of your roles in this room is so critical. We have to be more efficient. We have to figure out how we go and work across our silos to make sure that what we're doing is as impactful in the time that we have. So that role clarity is critical because not everybody needs to do the same thing. And I've had experience working in a nonprofit and leading national coalitions, and sometimes making the hard decision not to try and do everything, but giving folks role ownership, and you're going to do this part of the water mission, you're going to do this, is super critical, particularly right now. Clarifying that role will help us maximize not only your time and resources, but also the moment that we are in. The second piece is connecting across sectors, and this is where I get excited because I feel like there is always an opportunity to make new friends. You know, we talk a lot about, in industry, busting down silos and breaking silos, and to me, we don't necessarily have to break down the silos. We just have to learn to operate across the silos. So we know, again, that under this administration, there are some resources that are going to be lost. There are some, levels of enforcement that will be weakened. We know that there are going to be gaps. I hope you agree with me. And so the question now in this watershed moment is, how do we fill those gaps? And I truly feel like there are sectors, there are private industry, there are small businesses, there are other places and spaces where we can begin to get strategic and think creatively about how we connect across the different sectors to fill those gaps that are already there. So the question I always ask is, we have some great folks in the room, but who isn't here? Who are those folks that can take on a different role and help us fill some of those gaps that we know that exist, that will get us closer to our mission of watershed health? The third thing that again comes to mind, and going back to where I started, is centering resilience. This is a picture of a baobab tree in Africa, and it is known to be one of the trees that live the longest, that withstand weather and changes and serves as food and shelter in many different ways. This sucker is pretty resilient. And so when I think about my experience in administration and how that sharp change from when I was asked to resign in January, and the fact that from many perspectives, we had not set up a infrastructure for resilience. We had done a lot of great things, we tried to, in terms of policy and initiatives and things of that nature, but we didn't think about the what if or the plan B. And so when I think about resilience now, it is a little bit of personal resilience, but it's also the resilience in the systems and the policies that we depend on. So my question to you, as you go about your work, whatever it is, as a student, as a policymaker, as an advocate, as a researcher, how are you centering resilience in what you do? Are you asking the question, what will this thing that I'm doing or building, who will it benefit? Is there a way to make it stronger? Are there unintentional negative consequences that come from the thing that I'm trying to do or produce? How do we center resilience? How do we make what we're doing durable to withstand the stresses and the shocks of anything? And so for me in this watershed moment, we have an opportunity to rebuild in a way where we center resilience, where when the next thing happens, we are not as shaken. And I think that's super important when you talk about, again, the fragility of water and watershed in our ecosystem. The fourth thing is codifying environmental justice, or EJ solutions. Now, environmental justice, I have my own definition, but to me it is two things. It is an aspiration, it's where we want to be, and it's also a movement that was really started by people and continues with the power of people. And one of the things that I think is critical as I think about, again, all the different levels of solutions at all, from local policy, state policy, et cetera, is that we got to make sure that people are a part of the equation. And I did like a quick scan of watershed management plans in the state of Michigan. Again, I didn't do a dissertation on it, so forgive me if what I'm saying is inaccurate, but in the things that I looked at, I just quickly searched for the words environmental justice just to see, I don't know, if they were a part of any plans, anything that kind of codified solutions in a way that would, again, live to these aspirations of anybody and everybody, whether you're black, white, brown, low income, wherever you live from zip code, that would codify this purpose to make sure that everybody had an access to a healthy, safe water system. And I didn't see an environmental justice anywhere. And so I think as we talk about that broader vision and maximizing this moment, what are the things, what are the places that we can codify environmental justice in a way where it is not an afterthought, but it's actually a priority, so we can again begin to build in resilience to the systems and the infrastructure that, will take us again to that watershed moment. The fifth is really accountability and how we campaign for that. We just came out of an election, and in many ways, what I'm realizing is that while we have not too much control over what's happening in DC, we have a lot of control and power in our local and state governments, our city councils, our boards, our things of that nature. So how do we make sure that we are holding those folks accountable that have stepped up to lead in places that can influence and change and alter and minimize or strengthen our environmental protections? So what are you doing as an individual? What are you doing as an organization to make sure that we are holding people accountable? Whether it's a scorecard, whether it's a conversation, whether it's making sure that their plans incorporate your vision as a watershed council or as an individual. This accountability piece is going to be critical over the next couple years, because many of the things that we will rely on, as I said, will not be there to give us that cover, that extra sense of security. So it is up to each of you in this room to figure out, what is my role in making sure that we are holding the people that said that they were going to lead, that said that they were going to protect our environment, accountable. 6, concentrating on local advocacy. This is more important than ever. How many of you believe that your voice matters? Okay, see, that's not everybody, and that's scary. And I will say thank you to those that raised your hand, but I will say I've been working on voter education and engagement since my shackles were off in February. And it's scary the amount of apathy that I see across the communities. I'm an election inspector in West Bloomfield, and it's a shame that people don't feel that their voice matters. And this hits me hard, because people in many cases have given their lives to fight for the right to vote and the right to have a voice. And so whatever we can do to encourage people that your voice matters, your vote matters, is so critical, particularly for local issues, because this is where the rubber hits the road. We can do all we want at the federal government, but this is where the action is. This is where you can really promote justice and equity and health of your ecosystems. So I encourage you, if I'm already talking to a coalition of the willing, that's great. But my challenge to you is to bring a couple more folks in the fold, into the fight, into the advocacy. Be that evangelist, because again, the only way that we are going to get to a better tomorrow is by making sure that everyone is in this fight with us. The 7th, and I think the most important, as I think someone talked about, your reminder of resilience being your children, and the importance of, again, the next generation. When you think about the 60 years that this council has been operating, I wonder, was anyone here at the start of the council? I meant to ask that, because that would be powerful. About 10 years in, anybody? Okay. Well, it would be so interesting to understand what their vision was of the council when it started. And I encourage you to think about your role in what this legacy will be of the next 60 years. What is it that you want to be able to say that you accomplished, that you changed, particularly in what I'm calling, again, this watershed moment? So your commitment to that legacy, regardless of what role you play, is important. If you're just somebody that's interested in the environment and you live in this watershed, fantastic. If you're a student, researcher, media person, fantastic. Commitment is key. And when I think about my own personal commitments, because I'm going to ask you to voice your commitments, so I'm going to tell you mine, is that now in this realm of joining the university and research, part of my commitment is doing research not for fun, but for it to be usable and useful and really, again, shift the way we operate, shift the way we value and take care of community and, again, this planet that we've been lended. And so when I think about the importance of corporate responsibility and how I want to increase the level of accountability for our industrial partners to make sure that they're protecting people and the environment, that is what I'm going to be committed to doing through my research, to thinking about the importance of communities that are impacted by the cumulative burden of environmental exposures and the climate crisis. That's what I'm committed to doing, and not forgetting about our babies and our elders that are impacted by climate extremes. That is going to be my commitment to transformational research. But again, it's not just about the research and the books and the studies, but it's also about advocacy. So think about the ways that you can level up your commitments. Because again, the legacy for me is the legacy that I want my children to be able to enjoy. And as you know, I hope you realize we can't take anything that we have for granted. And so it's going to be up to each and every one of us to use this day and this time that you have, that you've been able to, again, take away from your day job, to learn about what's happening in the Huron, figure out some creative ways that you can collaborate, and really define what the legacy of this council and this watershed means over the next 60 years. And more importantly, how you're going to be a part of that legacy. And so I want you to take a minute. Again, this is probably the most interactive keynote that you've probably had. But I want you to think about and reflect on one thing that you are going to be committed to, even if it's just today. You've already taken a step and met somebody new that is no longer a stranger. But what is going to be your commitment to building out the legacy of not only this Watershed Council, but the way we show up in this watershed moment? Is there anyone that would like to voice their commitment? And I know that can be scary. Yes, sir.
So my name is David, and I work for the Watershed. And part of what I do is government relations work. I'm not a scientist, but I work with scientists. And my job is to take the science that they know and turn it into good public policy to protect the watershed.
Awesome, thank you. So that translation from science to policy is critical. Thank you. Anybody else is brave? Yes. I think we have a mic coming up to you.
Hi, my name's Chris, recently retired from the Huron River Watershed Council, and I loved what you said about connecting across sectors, and so I'm going to find another new sector to connect to.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you. All right, one more. Y'all are smiling and you're hoping I don't look your way, but I like looking people in the eye.
I'm Conan. Rebecca's on my board, so I have to do nice things for the Watershed Council. My job is to make sure that environmental organizations are connected to each other, and I've been really inspired by Rebecca and David, like trying to connect the watershed councils and build a policy agenda in Lansing. And I'm going to make sure that our team backs their move to make sure there is a unified statewide water agenda.
Awesome, thank you. Now, I'm going to, somebody that's not on the council. Yes, young man.
I'm Will Kitchen. I'm with Aqua Action. We just moved to Detroit 5 months ago. We develop K-12 water literacy programming, and we develop young entrepreneurs focused on freshwater solutions.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. All right, one more. Do we have any students in the room? Students that are willing to raise their hand. Oh, man, okay. Yes, thank you. I'm getting used to being back in the classroom, so give me a break.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lute. I'm a student at the University of Michigan, and I'm committed that through my PhD research there, which is to sort of help make technologies that make monitoring stream flow a little bit more robust and able to be implemented in communities. I think that this will really help build resilience in the face of more uncertain conditions during climate change. And yeah, it will help make information around flooding and other concerns that might be useful for communities to know more transparent so that, you know, people can be informed and can be knowing what's going on with their watershed.
Awesome, thank you. And I hope, what you realize, I think the power of this space is the community, right? I mean, we need community more than ever. So I hope the voices that you heard, if it's something of interest or if there's some way you can support the work that is going to be emerging, that you do that, that you connect, because that's how we make it through these moments of crisis and utilize this time again to protect the health and welfare of our community, our people, and our watershed. So with that, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to interacting with all of you the rest of the day.